Go ahead, Jim.
Okay. Thank you to Harold and DEPA for inviting Enterprise Products to take part in today's program. After that introduction, maybe I ought to apply for a job with Harold. Thanks to the oil and gas industry, not only do we have a large resource base, but that resource base is backed by something that I think is critical, and that's called private property rights, clear rule of law, and open markets. And the U.S. is now an important part of the global oil and gas equation. Regardless of the circumstance, financial market meltdowns, global price wars are now a pandemic. The oil and gas industry continues to show the world that we will not be denied. Make no mistake about it, and don't let anyone ever tell you different. The oil and gas products that you produce and that are exported are the backbone to the fuel and products that make people's lives around the world better. The world's population is nearly 8 billion people, and that's essentially doubled since 1975. Think about that. That's not that long ago. And we are expected to add 1 billion people every 12 years, most of them in underdeveloped nations who all want what we have. There's studies by the World Bank and the United Nations that concluded that there is a direct correlation between energy use per capita and quality of life. Let me give you one example from one hydrocarbon product. Prior to our shale miracle, hundreds of millions of people around the world had no hope other than living impoverished in countries that cooked and heated with coal, wood, and animal waste. They had no other options. Hydrocarbons were too expensive. In many cultures, people are relegated to the menial task of gathering wood and agricultural products for a large part of their day just to be able to care for their families. Lives are cut short, and millions, many of them children, are victim of pollution inside their homes. Because of our shale miracle in the U.S., global LPG prices have fallen to a level that now make it economic for many impoverished countries to convert homes to LPG. Several governments have initiated programs to convert hundreds of millions of households to clean burning LPG. And frankly, over the last 10 years, 75% of that demand growth for LPG has come from the US. India has converted 100 million homes from burning coal and dung and wood to LPG, with another 50 million targeted. Nigeria has converted 40 million homes. China has completely banned the use of coal, and their LPG demand has gone up 60%. And there's still 1 billion people in sub-Saharan Africa that's still burning wood and coal and dung. LPG is cheap to ship, portable. All you got to do is fill your propane tank and carry it home. Also, LNG is playing an increasing important role, especially in fueling power generation in poor nations. Because of the U.S. shale industry, global energy prices have fallen substantially, and our import-export balance for crude oil, refined products, and NGLs have moved from imports to exports, which continue to grow. Consider in 2008, the U.S. spent $400 billion importing hydrocarbons. Today, we are a net exporter of hydrocarbons. Last but not least, because of an abundance of shale feedstocks, our petrochemical industry has moved from being a marginal demand-dominated feedstock short industry to being the global petrochemical leader. Today, the U.S. is the largest ethylene producer in the world at 90 billion pounds a year, which is up from 50 billion pounds just a few years ago. In 10 short years, we've moved from decades of being a desperate oil and gas importer into the global leader in oil and gas production. Things were rocking along pretty good, but then all of a sudden in mid-March, our world turned upside down when we were invaded by an invisible enemy called COVID. I like what President Trump calls it better, the China virus. Demand literally fell off a cliff. I've heard global demand losses ranging immediately after the pandemic started from 20 to 25 million barrels a day, almost overnight. Our industry is always going through cycles, but I don't know if it's fair to call a global pandemic another cycle. We had a financial crisis in 2009. We had an oil price crash in 15 and 16. We thought $26 was bad, but I think it was April 20th, 2020, when we printed a negative $37 crude oil. I don't have to tell you on this call that something is terribly messed up with that. COVID has been worse than all of our previous cycles because early on, COVID seemed completely out of our control. It immediately threatened millions of lives and rocked economies. This isn't the first time, and I'm going to date myself, this isn't the first time in my life we've been invaded by an invisible enemy. As a little boy, I remember the most feared disease of the 20th century. It was polio. My mom, who was a nurse, caught polio, and I remember standing outside the hospital with my 3 little brothers and my dad so we could see her through a window. We took mitigation steps. Swimming pools and movie theaters and public playgrounds were closed during what was called polio season, which was the summer. We did not shut down the entire U.S. economy, losing tens of millions of jobs in 6 weeks. Just as we've learned to cope with polio, we are learning to cope with COVID. At Enterprise, while we went on a skeletal staff the middle of March, and most of our employees worked from home by the end of March, we were fully staffed. Masks are a condition of employment. We encourage distancing, we encourage hygiene, and we encourage being just as responsible away from work as you are at work. I believe we're the classic example that you can go back to business even with COVID. In addition, numerous vaccines are imminent, and some may be before the election. The last 6 months have been the worst industry downturn in my career. But maybe I've learned or confirmed what I already suspected. The world wants and needs United States hydrocarbons. They want propylene and ethylene and polypropylene and polyethylene. Give you an example, we're in the middle of a pandemic, and this month, Enterprise will ship over 50 million barrels of hydrocarbon products across our docks. Petrochemicals are reporting strong demand for their derivative products, especially ethylene, driven in part by increased demand for single-service type products as the world deals with a pandemic. Propylene is similarly in strong demand to manufacture badly needed PPE. Bob Patel, the CEO of Lyndale, said it best on their second quarter earnings call when he said, "The pandemic has generated a renewed appreciation of the value of our chemical and polymer products for society." U.S. energy is absolutely essential in raising standards of living around the world and improving and saving lives. These people that want to ban fracking or adopt the so-called Green New Deal are either naive or just flat out dishonest. We would make countries that don't like us richer is energy prices would go up dramatically. Russia would love for the U.S. to ban fracking. There's no way you could afford to put sanctions on Iran because the world would need their oil. Saudi Arabia would be even richer and would be kissing the king of their king again. That woman in India would continue to cook with wood, coal, and dung because hydrocarbons would be too expensive. Remember what I said earlier. The UN and World Bank have concluded that there is a direct correlation between energy use per capita and quality of life. People who live in poverty around the world want what we have. And these anti-hydrocarbon initiatives are really saying you can't have a better quality of life. These anti-fossil fuel initiatives will ensure that our military involvement in the Middle East will increase in order to guarantee the free flow of oil from that region. What does that mean? It means, once again, we send our children to a part of the world that's run by despotic regimes that don't share our values. As the father of an Army officer who spent 15 months in Iraq, take my word for it, energy security matters. And I hope that no one else has to ever take their son or daughter and drop them off for a flight for deployment to the Middle East. What you are doing is making a real difference, not just to our country, but to human beings around the world who want and need the things that you have. Don't ever let anyone tell you otherwise. Our Shell miracle is making people's lives better, and all of you have made that possible. All time.